In 1968, BBC ran a segment in which they interviewed citizens from around the world, asking the same question to discover some sort of commonality between people of different countries. In one such segment, they asked an Israeli, an American, and a Russian communist the following question. "Excuse me, do you have an opinion on the international food shortage?" The differences in responses shocked the world. The communist asked, "What's an opinion?" The American, "What's a shortage?" The Israeli, "What's excuse me?" The fun thing about this joke is there are 3 punchlines, and you can say it 3 different times in different order. Well, you could say it as many times as you want, but you can use different orders, ending with the final one, whichever punchline you'd like to focus on. I want to focus this time on the second one. Do Americans know shortage? In the land of surplus with mega stores, you can buy watermelons in bulk. The White House Council of Economic Advisors estimated that almost 553,000 people live on the streets. Living in Los Angeles, I come in contact with these people almost at a daily basis. In my first year living there, I felt pulled in so many different directions. If I give the guy $1 right now, do I have to go over to everyone else? And if I give her a bottle of water, do I need to go back to Walgreens and buy an entire new case? What if when I give them money, they don't really need it or they spend it on some vice? I asked these questions to an old friend of mine named John Morad, who lives in New York City, where somehow the situation is even worse. He taught me a very important lesson. He said that anytime someone asks him for money or food that he doesn't have tangibly, he tries to offer them a kind word or ask their name. He learns this, of course, from Maimonides in the Mishnah Torah, who writes that if we don't have anything tangible to give, at least speak kindly to the person. Rabbi Chaim of Tans, a 19th century Hasidic rabbi, addressed the second issue. When asked about people who ask but maybe don't really need it, he replied, "The merit of charity is so great that I'm happy to give it to 100 beggars, if only just one is needy. Some people, however, act as if they are exempt from giving charity to 100 people, if only one might be a fraud." I try to internalize these messages, to offer a good word, to assume good intentions. And about 2 years ago, in my second year of rabbinical school, everything came together, and I had an interaction with someone that changed my life. It's about 6 p.m. on a Thursday afternoon on a day that started at 8, the end of the week. It's a very long day, long week, and all I want to do is go home to my friend's apartment, lie down on the couch, and turn on either Scrubs or How I Met Your Mother. But my car needs gas. So I pull over to the Arco on the corner of Olympic and Robertson and start pumping. As I finish paying way too much money for gas, living here in Houston, it's a blessing. As I finish paying way too much money for gas, a disheveled guy about my age approaches me and asks for specifically 50 cents. I ask what it's for, and he says he needs something to eat. Now I'm interested. Los Angeles, 50 cents for a meal, sign me up. I don't have the change, but I'm also a little hungry, so I offer to get him something at the Thai place right across the street. We introduce each other. He says his name is Calvin. My name is Kevin. He says he moved here from Birmingham, Alabama. I'm from Houston, Texas. I moved out here for school, and he moved out there to help his mom get settled. Her Section 8 housing in Birmingham unfortunately burned down, and she had always wanted to live in California. So she applied, and there was an opening in LA, and she got to live there. Unfortunately, there was only enough room in the apartment for one person, and Calvin had a younger brother, and so the mom and the brother had to cram in, and Calvin volunteered to sleep in a tent nearby. He grew up playing football and track, but baseball was his favorite sport. There's another commonality. I, too, grew up playing sports, and baseball's number one. He was 23 years old, turning 24 on November 1st. I was 23 years old, turning 24 on November 15th. He was pursuing a GED, an apprenticeship as a mechanic. I, a master's in education and rabbinics. We ate our mediocre food, talked about football, and laughed about the way people are so much friendlier outside of Los Angeles, and then went our separate ways. Me to my friend's apartment, and Calvin to the tent behind the gas station. Prior to the pandemic, the Federal Reserve determined that 40% of Americans could not afford a random $400 expense, a one-time $400 expense. Calvin could barely afford a $4 meal. 1 in 9 Americans, including 11 million children, according to the Department of Agriculture, is food insecure. They don't know if they're going to consume sufficient calories day to day. Calvin, because he gave all of his income to his mom and to his younger brother, had to beg for 50 cents at a time to eat a daily Big Mac. So back to the punchline of the opening joke. I'm pretty sure Calvin, like millions of other Americans, knows shortage. So often our response to poverty is to feel bad for those in need and maybe to wish that we could do something more. It's a timeless problem. And anytime we come across a timeless problem, we check our timeless text. Let's take a few minutes to look at the Torah and see what the Torah has to say. No fewer than 36 times, the most out of any commandment, are we commanded not to oppress a stranger, for we were strangers in Egypt. The mitzvah is usually repeated in tandem with the commandment to look out for the orphan, the widow, the Levite, the stranger, those in need among us. Don't worry, we're not going to look at all 36. We're only going to examine one that we read just a few weeks ago. In Deuteronomy chapter 26, verses 12 through 15, we learn about a produce tax. Every 3 years, we're supposed to set aside 10% of our crop yield. V'natata leLevi lager liatom la'almana ve'achlu bisharecha v'saveu. And give it to the Levite, the stranger, the orphan, and the widow, and they will eat it in your gates, and they will be satisfied. God commands us not just to donate food to those who need it, but rather to eat side by side with them and to provide enough food for everyone to feel satisfied. Read on and we learn something even more powerful. Remember, this commandment comes in the form of a tax, and I'm not a fan of taxes, I don't know about you. When we tithe our produce, we are to ritualize the taxation by saying the following statement. And here's the quote. I have cleared out the consecrated portion from the house, and I have given it to the Levite, the stranger, the orphan, and the widow, just as you commanded me. I have neither transgressed nor neglected any of your commandments. I have not eaten of it while in mourning. I have not cleared out any of it while I was unclean, and I have not deposited any of it with the dead. I have obeyed the Lord my God. I have done just as you commanded me. Look down from your holy abode from heaven and bless your people Israel and the soil you have given us, a land flowing with milk and honey, as you swore to our ancestors. A land flowing with milk and honey. In the act of giving food to the poor, we thank God for providing a land flowing with milk and honey. You might think that we're thanking God for giving us the reward for doing a good deed, but I see it differently. The reward for doing good is the good that comes out of the deed. By providing enough food for the needy, respecting their dignity by eating with them and providing enough for everyone to feel satisfied, the land gives off the impression as though it is flowing with milk and honey. In just a few days on Yom Kippur, we're going to say the Avinu Malkeinu prayer, asking God to provide us with support. Avinu Malkeinu, malei yadeinu mibirkotecha. Avinu Malkeinu, fill our hands with your blessings. We petition God to fill us with heavenly blessings, to treat us with kindness, with mercy, to provide us with the feelings of acceptedness and community, and to grant us the privilege of living with those who care for our well-being. Do we treat those on the streets with kindness and mercy, even asking their name? Do we help them in our community and care for their well-being? Avinu Malkeinu maleh asamenu sava. Avinu Malkeinu, fill our storehouses with abundance. Grant us the financial stability that can allow for us to sleep without worrying about our family going hungry or missing a rent check or the electricity shutting off in the ninth inning of the Astros game. Although lately that doesn't sound so bad. Do we donate to shelters or foundations that help feed the homeless? Do we contribute to programs that help train people with skills that can help them better themselves? Do we do our very best to treat everyone with the dignity they deserve as children of God? Avinu Malkeinu, na al tashivenu rekam milfanecha. Avinu Malkeinu, please don't turn us away empty-handed from you. Many in our community have ceased praying to God because they feel God doesn't answer. What about those in our community we have neglected to the point to where they've even stopped asking us for help? If someone needed help, would you be the right person to ask? Ask yourself in these days. Let's hold each other accountable and each be that person we would want to turn to if we needed it. Let's create a world in which we can honestly tell the following joke. In 2021, we'll need a little bit of time, BBC is going to run a segment in which they interview citizens from all over the world, asking the same question to find commonalities between everyone. In one such segment, they ask an Israeli, a Russian communist, and an American the following question. Excuse me, do you have any opinion on the international food shortage? The difference in opinion will shock the world. The Israeli, what's excuse me? The communist, why am I still doing here? And the American, who could be any person living in the United States of America, will ask, what's a shortage? Shabbat shalom and gemar chatima tova.